What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about what data came out today that caused the market to move the way it did, and some very important levels to watch for as time goes on. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, deposit $100 into the accounts, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. Now, the offer ends in just about 3 days from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So, guys, in my morning video, I told you all that Tesla was making an attempt to try to bounce, but we had to be watching for confirmation to see if we'd get a big rejection or not. And that's why I called out these levels. I told you all that Tesla would make an attempt to possibly get to about 261. If we rejected off this, we could see Tesla start sinking. I actually drew this out. I told you that if we broke that, we could have seen Tesla get a breakout. So that was a little tricky to tell in the morning. But what ended up happening was Tesla came just short of 261. We ended up rejecting off just under 260. And then we got this big rejection with the market. And that was very, very important. And on SPY, I also talked about how, this thing was trying to bounce in the morning. Remember, SPY was green in the morning, so was Tesla. Tesla wasn't green, but it was trying to turn green. And if you look at SPY, okay, this thing closed all the way down here yesterday at 432-ish. This morning, we tried to push all the way up to 436. So it was trying to bounce, right? It was trying to push up. And I warned everyone that, look, if you see this thing break 437, this thing could start trying to go up to 438 and try to hold up. But if we rejected off this 437 area, we had a head and shoulders on SPY and we could get a rejection. I went over those two possibilities. I did not say that the market is going to bounce and pump and pump. You have to really watch the video and listen to what I said earlier. And we ended up getting the bearish scenario. We got this big rejection after the data came out, and we have a very clean looking head and shoulders on Tesla and SPY and all these different tickers. So when did the market really start sinking? We were basically holding up in the very beginning, but then all this data came out 30 minutes after the market opens. We had the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report. This basically showed that there was a big drop in consumer sentiment and a big increase in inflationary expectations. So consumer sentiment declined, showing signs of economic contraction, and the inflationary expectations went up to 3.8%, showing signs that people are expecting more inflation to increase. So with that happening, right, this was the piece of data that was used to cause the market to drop. There's also a technical aspect to this. Technicals played a big role as well. You also have to look at max pain. Nvidia's max pain was lowered. SPY's is also lower than where we were initially. It's currently at 432, and Tesla's was very close to where we were. So I called all of this out in the morning. I told you all that both possibilities are out there. For the upside and the downside, we'd be watching for rejection or not. The market was trying to pump because we had some bank earnings that ended up beating expectations by a long shot, but then the market ended up rejecting after this data came out. So I just wanted to call out something very important on Tesla, SPY, and all these tickers. One risk for the markets is that there's a possible head and shoulders forming on Tesla. There's also one on SPY and the QQQ. So with this head and shoulders like pattern, here are some important levels to watch for on Tesla. Now, Tesla is looking a bit weaker right now. Tesla could end up seeing, signs of a rejection if this thing breaks below 252.5. If Tesla loses that, 250 is going to be the last major support on Tesla. But it has to try to hold 250. If Tesla loses 250, it's going to come all the way down to this imbalance at 247, and we could even see it make a full measured move down to 245. Okay, there's a possibility if Tesla breaks these key supports. As of right now, we're trying to hold above 252.5, and we're just barely below the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. The trend looks more bearish, so the odds do favor more downside with this head and shoulders, but watch resistance at 254.29 and watch 255 and then 256.5 as resistance levels for Tesla, and we will see if this ends up breaking down or not. And I also want to call this out on SPY. The same thing is basically developing. Very clean looking head and shoulders. But this 50 EMA is going to be key at 431.5. If we lose that on SPY, if we hold below that, right, we have to hold it. We can't just get bought right back up above it. Or if we close below that, that's going to be a signal that this head and shoulders is playing out. And SPY could come all the way down to at least 427. It could even drop lower than that. If this thing manages to hold above 432, 432 is going to be another support to watch for. Then we have 433 acting as support slash resistance. That's the zone we're at. To turn bullish, you need to see SPY break and hold 436.2, and we're very far from that. Right now, this trend is looking a bit more bearish. We're kind of stationary, trading sideways between 433 and 431, but there is a chance that this thing's going to eventually break down going into next week if we lose that 50 EMA. So there's a risk of that happening. I just wanted to call that out. And finally, I just wanted to show you the head and shoulders on the QQQ. We were talking about this as well. Let me just pull up my chart. So don't forget, on SPY, we called out this level, this possible head and shoulders. We also called out an attempt to break out, or if it would fail or not. If you look at the QQQ, we also called out something very similar. So we were talking about this attempts to push up, because remember, in the morning, the market was pumping. The QQQ was trying to push up towards 371. I told you if we broke 371, this thing could have gone to 372.65. If we rejected off 371, we could have seen this thing sink all the way down to the 360s. Now, we also called out this level right here. I was actually had this pointed right here, but I drew this a little lower just to show you if this support breaks. So watch this 365 to 366 support on the QQQ. If we lose 365, we could see this thing sink towards 363 and then 361. Resistance right now is at 367. If you break this, watch 368.7. If that breaks, watch 370 as resistance. These are some important levels, but just know that there's a head and shoulders forming. So it's very possible that this head and shoulders could lead to more downside if we break these levels. This looks a bit more bearish, but right now it's kind of like range trading around the 366 to 368 area. So watch those levels carefully and just know that there is a risk of more downside in the future as this thing is starting to make lower highs and lower lows, and we have a possible head and shoulders. On Nvidia stock, I just wanted to mention that Nvidia has a very similar trend. We called out this pump on Nvidia, and I told you that if this thing got rejected off this trend line, which is very close to about 472, this thing could come sinking all the way down to this very low level. If this thing broke this trend line, we could have seen this thing pump even higher towards 475. What happened? We got the rejection off 471, so just short of 472. And then this thing started sinking back down to the critical level, which is currently at 460. Now, if 460 fails NVIDIA, watch 458. Don't forget max pain is well below where we currently are, but I'm not going to count on that to be reached until we break below 458. And if we lose that, watch this trend line right here where I'm pointing, this trend line down here, which is going to be around 453. Now, as far as Nvidia goes, in my opinion, it is looking a bit weaker right now. So watch that 460 support. We will see if that holds. And just know that we got this big rejection. And in order for us to try to turn bullish and try to get our way back up, we have to get back above this yellow resistance right here. We have to try to break above, 470 to try to turn back in favor of the bulls. And we're very far from that. So Nvidia is looking a bit weaker. So watch resistance at 462, 465, and then finally this 467 area. If we break above that, then 470 is on the table, those higher levels. It's not really looking like that's going to happen. It is looking a bit weaker overall when it comes to the trend. So there could be more downside. We have a possible head and shoulders forming, and this is historically nothing that's like out of the ordinary for Nvidia and tickers like that. So there's a risk of downside. Watch this 460 range. If 458 breaks, more downside is likely coming. Nvidia is looking a bit weaker, but watch this trend very carefully. Finally, for Apple, Apple's been holding up okay. For Apple, we were calling out this very important level. So we were talking about this 181.5 area. I told you if this got rejected, this thing would come sinking all the way down towards 178. If this thing broke out, we probably see this thing hit 182.5. What happened? Apple tried to break it and it failed. It got a big rejection. After it broke below this yellow trend line, I told you to watch this as a critical level. This trend line right here, which is acting as resistance. We got this rejection. We came all the way back down, and it went all the way down to about 178.5. So very close to 178, just a little bit above that. And now Apple's kind of range trading in the 179s. So watch 179.4 as resistance, which is right about here. Watch 180 as resistance, and then 181.5 as critical resistance. Watch support around this 178.5 area, and then also 178, not to mention 177.5. Those are some very important levels. There's a possible head and shoulders like pattern developing on Apple if we do continue to downtrend. This trend is looking a bit more bearish, so the odds do favor more downside in the future. just know that it is kind of range trading for the time being, but downside is still imminent. Let me just go back to Tesla. I didn't really talk enough about it on TradingView. So Tesla, it made a small attempt to bounce, but it's actually very minor in the morning, and it got this big rejection. It actually came short of our target, and then this thing came down. So now Tesla's kind of range trading at very low levels. Watch this 252.5 zone, very close to this level, is going to be key for Tesla. If we lose it, Tesla's going to be sinking all the way down to 250, if not the lower levels. So watch that very carefully. Also remember that we just tested this trend line right here. This is going to be our support. Watch resistance. We have critical resistance right now at 255 and also at 254. Tesla's looking a bit more bearish. It's making lower highs and lower lows, and there's a possible head and shoulders right here that could lead to more downside. So we're going to be watching this very carefully going into next week. And just know that next week we have earnings, so things could change as soon as mid next week. So we'll be waiting for that, and we'll be watching all these levels very carefully. All right, guys. So the market may just kind of chill around the levels we're at, but there is a risk of more downside, especially because SPY's max pain's at 432. We're currently at 432.9. So be careful, guys. Just know the warnings I told you and watch these levels very carefully. All right. I hope this video was helpful. I appreciate everyone out there. Thank you all so much, and peace out.